and welcome back to the Warren Davis Anthology, where we talk about the incredible artwork of Warren Davis and the stories that inspired them. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it. We've got a couple of guests joining us today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Phil, also known as Blubberboy. Glad to be here.
Yes, I'm known as Cube, and I'm also very happy to be here.
I am Crumb Dumpster, and thank you for inviting me for the podcast.
Hi, I'm Alex. Happy to be here.
Welcome, everyone, to this, our final episode of the Warren Davis Anthology. A quick question. Has anybody been tuning in to the anthology while it's been posting?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Good.
definitely.
Good. And what do we think of the Warren Davis Anthology? Have we been enjoying this sort of traipse through the past and a revisit of some of these iconic stories and pieces of artwork?
Yes, it's definitely giving me sort of nostalgia. It's taking me back to, being in my parents' basement as a child, reading stories, looking at imagery, that type of thing, as, getting into my teens and adult years, and being able to really reflect on those stories and actually what they've meant to me.
So listen, as we've kicked off with most episodes, we'll ask each of you all for a little snapshot of y'all's gaming journeys. Phil, Moshe, I know that you shared with us in the past, so feel free to give us the highlights and we'll go from there.
So my gaming journey was highly aligned with the Gainer stories. Hearing the stories, reading the stories, finding them online in the few places we had back in the day. It really helped build what I see myself as a Gainer. Hearing what other people thought about imagination, about growing, the fantasies, everything just aligned, and it just reinforced, who I was, what I wanted to do, and it really just helped me feel so good about myself and my community, knowing that I belonged somewhere. I think that was so important very early on, that I wasn't alone, that other people shared the things that I fantasized about since I was a child. And it is a very welcoming part. And that's what these stories, coming back to them, has done for me. Just helped me reminisce and get back in touch, like Rob said, with growing up and building my own sense of sexuality and self as a Gainer.
As far as my story involving it, I was coming out as a gay person and as an encourager at the same time. Talk about a double load. And I was just very lucky to run into a wonderful crowd of people who welcomed me with open arms and convinced me that my fantasies and my desires were perfectly all right, and that I could even share them with other people and turn out some pretty good stories and meet some lovely people along the way.
For me, I would have to say it's more reassuring. Again, a lot of my stuff is going to be similar to Phil's, that there were other people like me out there. I was a gay rural kid in Midwest Michigan. I wasn't in a big city. There wasn't very many people that I knew like me out there. So being able to see these types of stories and imagery did reaffirm and show that there's representation for people that like a bigger figure. And it, as again, somebody that's was a teen going into young adulthood and into adulthood, it's great to be able to read that type of stuff and know you're not broken. Like, the world's anti-fat, but I like it. Why? And to see that there's other people that like it is definitely something that it was a big impactful thing for me for the stories.
Yeah, my story might be a little bit different than most of the ones that I've heard. I didn't really find gaining until I was in college, and I was kind of in and out of the community for a little while. I did gain about 50 pounds, and then I had a back injury, and that made it really hard to continue muscle gaining or to gain fat. And it hasn't been until more recently that I've been getting back into the community. So yeah, it's a little bit of a resurgence for me. So this came at a very good time.
Well, everyone, thank you for sharing your journeys. And I'd also like to inquire here how each of you first came across the Warren Davis artwork. And for anyone who has tuned into the series, perhaps you already know that some spoilers here. Perhaps some among us have had the honor and privilege of meeting the man himself.
Well, I guess I'll jump in. So, as I mentioned, I came out as both an encourager and a gay person, and one of the first people I reached out to was John Alcott, who published Encouragement magazine. And one of his star artists was Warren. And first met Warren at an envelope stuffing at, well, I think it was John's house. And when I needed an artist to take over the story that I was working on, because I realized that I could not draw it myself, though I had been trying to. John decided that Warren would be the perfect fit. So guinea pigs, the artwork for guinea pigs was born. And his art, I've always treasured his artwork and always, I mean, I just love the joy he puts into them, the sheer enjoyment of the people that you see in them. And Warren himself was a delightful person to know. Hopefully, he still is a delightful person. Sadly, I have not been in touch with him for a long time.
For me, I would have to say it was finding it through other types of like gaining pages, Belly Builders, Inquirer back in the day, Fatnats would have some stuff that would reference some of those stories. You know, the original OG purple Belly Builders page, Gainer Web, that type of stuff, where, you know, as you kind of search and ask Jeeves back in the day about it, then yeah, you would end up getting these results and you kind of take a deeper dive. And next thing you know, you're starting to see all of your guys' stories cube that have been written and imaged and all that other stuff by Warren. And it's just one of those things where it's like, it's kind of an addiction after a while. It's like, I need my fix of Warren Davis. I need to get my fix of looking at the imagery. And then, it's one of those things that has stayed with me even to this day.
I have to say that my introduction to Warren Davis was also in the encouragement newsletters. I think I did also run across it on the Belly Builders website, but I think it was really primarily through John's newsletter, Encouragement, and waiting for that bi-monthly publication with very eager, chubby hands to get my eyes on the latest stories. And, Moshe, I don't think I've ever asked you what it was like meeting Warren Davis. And I think you're really one of the few people that actually had met him. So I look forward to hearing whatever you can share about Mr. Davis, during today's episode. But I am so grateful to have been part of that early community, to be able to meet many individuals and find that kind of brotherhood through the Warren Davis stories.
Yeah, again, a little atypical. I didn't find gaining until a little bit later after coming out. And I mean, the late 90s, early 2000s, like Twink was in. So that wasn't what I was into, and it was kind of hard to find things. So in the early days of the interwebs, I don't know what site it was, probably one of the GeoCities or GainerWeb or something. But I think that guinea pigs was the first introduction I had. And I just remember reading it, and I think I came back to it like several times. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so hot. Like, what is this? And that led to finding out like, oh, people become bears on purpose. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I didn't know that like the stories and Warren Davis were separate for a while. So yeah, for me, it was like the introduction to the stories and then kind of the artwork through that. And then, yeah, curious me searching through all the other great stories and artwork. It was a great time.
I'd be curious to know for each of you, and for Moshe, I know you've authored two of the stories. So, like, what are your guys' favorite Warren Davis stories? And maybe Moshe, for you, are there any others besides the two that you authored?
Oh, there were a couple that I found very hot. I mean, Bellied Boy with a Badge was one that I still remember scanning the artwork for him for GainerWeb. And I mean, he left actually one of the panels behind, and I still have it. And another was My Italian Cousin, which also just was delightful. I mean, and there were other individual bits of artwork that the just the joy of being a big fat man just literally radiated from them. The sort of man I wanted to cuddle with and hang out with. I mean, it was maybe part of it was I'd had a crush on Warren, and it may have been part due to his artwork because he was also very good company as a friend. But the artwork just the stories were that he did. Fat Break was a lot of fun. I mean, there's so many that I could bring up that I'm sure you all enjoyed.
For me, for kind of the size love that I have, a super heavyweight class always kind of gets it for me. That's always a big one that I really enjoy. But to be honest, Fatburger is my first one that I read that kind of introduced me to it, that got me, addicted to reading more about, the gaining and the imagery. But the one I always kept coming back to is probably Super Heavyweight Class and Joining the Force. Those are kind of the two that I had those bookmarked, I had them saved away.
I'm there with you because you like Super Heavyweight Class has some elements of macro towards the end of it, and then Joining the Force, like, I mean, even as like to be talking about law enforcement in 2025, yeah, it's controversial, but like the fat cop trope has always been a thing, like, and it was very popular in the 90s.
I have to say, like Rob, I also really enjoyed Fatburger. That was just, that hit all the points for me. And then The Feast of San Gennaro, I love that story. That's when I found Moshe's writing just incredibly aligned with a real sense of romantic sexuality. And the pairing with the artwork from Warren Davis just brought it to life in ways that my young, chubby hands just couldn't get enough of. And Moshe's style of writing was quite spectacular, I have to say, in terms of telling that story. So those are two of my favorites.
Yeah, I said that Guinea Pigs was my first, so there's definitely a bit of nostalgia. So it's cool to be on this call with you, Moshe. And it's interesting going back now and rereading some of those stories because, I mean, I think An Affair to Remember was my second one, and just reading through some of them, they're different than I remember them. But also the Warren Davis WordPress site, they posted a new story that supposedly was written by Warren Davis that is really good. It's called Growing Pains. And actually, James, it reminds me of the story that you shared in one of the earlier of the anthology, including some cheesecake. So
Oh,
I
yes.
highly recommend going back to that.
Oh, yes, my cheesecake story, which I think that was on your episode regarding Doughboys with you and Miss Ivy Davenport.
Oh,
And
and
that's
Doughboys is also really great. Love that one.
Doughboys is my number one. It's fantastic, and of course, the joke has been made many times throughout this series when Tim and I were doing research, having to reflect and reread these stories. It took me a little bit longer than I'd anticipated because several stories I would just sort of reach a certain point where the thought would cross my mind that I need to really dig deep and investigate this story. I need to study it thoroughly and take the evening, I think, to really unpack the words that are being written on the page.
I was gonna say that's the type of journalism that we like to see.
And I was going to
Well,
say, for
yes.
what? To submit it to the Library of Congress?
Well, yes. And so that when I inevitably submit this YouTube series for a Pulitzer Prize, that they can't point to anything as a disqualifying factor. Oh my goodness. But no, I think it's a real delight getting to reflect on these stories. And I would like to take a moment here, Alex, Moshe, there's such something quite beautiful, the generational element within gaming that I don't think we get the chance to see and celebrate. Motion Phil, as you both know, we're starting to make some real endeavored moves to highlight members of our community, establish individuals who have been around pre-internet, who are still here, who are still engaging, and people who have done things and seen things. There are stories that must be shared, and there are actions that cannot be understated. And in fact, Moshe, I think on one of such episodes, we sort of dug in a little bit when it was that day, talking about the Feast of San Gennaro with Warren. You're walking down the street seeing the feast in action, and you both kind of turn to each other and go, wouldn't this make for a good story? And
Oh, yes.
I'm sure in the moment you think, we're feeling a type of way, we're writing a story, we're drawing a picture. We'll share it with some people, and that's it. But in actual fact, there are people who are on this call right now who, because of the words you wrote and because of the collaboration with Warren's artwork, it inspired the desire to change and transform, and they're sat with us here. And I think this is a really cool moment to appreciate the effect and potency that to simply exist and operate in our strength and power can have an influence on people's lives. And I think that that's really fucking cool. And so just little claps for thank you for everyone here. Thank you, Moshe, for doing what you did. Thank you, Phil, for being who you are. Thank you, Rob and Alex. And I think that's just going to be the vibe of today's episode. You know, it's just like, nice.
Well, and speaking in terms of influence, for those of us that are gainers, like Moshe, I know you identify as an encourager, but like, has the artwork that Warren created like influenced any of your gaining journeys?
Yeah, definitely for me. I would say, I felt like it was something I had to keep hidden so much and keep it a secret, like double life, like there's still to this day, I'm not like an out and proud, like I wear it on my sleeve, obviously, but when they see the fat hanging out of my sleeves, they're going to know I'm kind of into being a larger man because they haven't done anything about it. It's one of those things where reading it kind of again gave me that reassurance and that representation that there are people out there that do enjoy a large man. So being able to be like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to actively make myself larger and how I feel more attractive and stuff like that. Seeing it in the imagery and having other people, watch the sensuality of two men, really getting, exploring a fat body, that type of thing, has totally made it, this is okay. This is something that I really want to do. And, it's one of those, you only live once, so you might as well make the best of it and be happy. So I'm choosing to be fat and happy. And that imagery and the stories really helped influence that.
I really like that. If I could piggyback off of that, because I think the meaning for what Warren Davis produced has changed for me. Like at first, I didn't notice as many details. Like it really was just about discovering like someone else's fantasy that I also shared. And looking at it now at this point in time and going back through the stories and the artwork, reading the interview, which is like the little bit of information that the rest of us know about him. He was really just inspired by like people who were free and comfortable in their bodies. And he really captured that fat joy that we don't really get to feel and experience all that often unless we're with other, gainers or encouragers or the few friends and civilians that are body positive. So yeah, just trying to see the world the way that he saw it, just like seeing people who get to go out in the world and be free and the experiences that can be joyous for us as gainers and encouragers or admirers, any of the people in our community, has really impacted how I want to go forward as well.
I have to say, to echo both on what Rob and Alex have stated, I think for me, the stories helped me take it out of the bedroom to see, you know, and read about individuals who are fat and gaining in public, you know, in a restaurant or, you know, among, you know, civilian society. I think seeing it first, to envision it, to be able to imagine being out in the world as a gainer, as someone choosing to be fat. I think it was helpful in that respect for me to have that much more confidence in going out and meeting people and trying some of the things in the stories in real life and seeing how those elements have made it into certain practices, you know, like with funnel feeding. And I love that, because that one piece is such an aesthetic that many people feel, even though it's not the most practical. You can obviously do a lot more just, you know, without the funnel, but there's something about it that has been so embedded in gainer fantasy that everyone wants to try the funnel feeding. You know, it's just, I think the stories have really just enriched so many of us, and me in particular as well, from my own experience, that just grateful that they gave such a rich base to build from and to pull from, you know, as we interact with others, as I interact with others over the years.
Well, as an encourager, the main thing about it for me at the time, you know, that I was part of this world, which was amazing, was that I had a friend that we could be walking down the San Gennaro Festival, and suddenly I'm trading ideas with someone that I could never trade those ideas with anybody else I knew. And we're just laughing insanely as we're going like, well, you know, you've worked on the police, so what was it like dealing with San Gennaro? And I'm saying, well, they used to joke about how much weight they'd gain on patrol. And we're looking at each other and, okay. And as we're walking and looking at the police enjoying their Zeppole and everybody else, okay, there is an idea here and we are going to develop it. And the fun I had with that in the 1990s, where who else could you do, you know, who else was I doing that with? It was before the internet. And so I at least had this wonderful group of people, and Warren was a very important part of that. And he got me thinking in story ideas that maybe I wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
You know, quick question, just out of curiosity. Does the Feast of San Gennaro happen anymore?
Oh, it's still there every
Okay.
September.
Right. Tim, we're gonna fucking do the Feast of San Gennaro at some point, because I want to feel the fucking fantasy. Uh, I and it's
You're
funny when
gonna
I
you're
think
gonna have
about
to come to Cleveland too. It's in August for the Feast of the Assumption. That's something that Little Italy does here, and it's obviously it's not as big as San Gennaro because it's not in New York City, but still a
still.
really huge festival and tons of people, tons of food. So
You know, there's a part of my brain that goes, I'm not on Grommr these days, but when I reflect, I don't know that I ever saw someone be like, I was inspired by the story, I rocked up at the feast to see if there were any gainers about, if there was anyone making a pig of this. And like, I don't know that I've ever seen anyone post about it. So I feel like New Yorkers, you'll have been caught slacking. Maybe. I think we have a responsibility here to do a little something.
I'm surprised they don't have a event, you know, like a Grommr that, hey, we're just gonna
Yeah.
go to the come on, meet at Rock Bar.
So, what kind of impact do you guys feel that Warren's work has had on the broader community, if any? Like, do you think that, because I'm sure that people outside the community have seen those images before, and speaking to feedies and feeders that are in the straight community, they are very aware of who
Yeah.
Warren Davis
We
is.
we've had
S-
April and Ivy Davenport on the series. Both of them made it very clear. Like they'd seen this artwork before. Warren's work transcends homosexuality. The people who love a chunky man, they have found it and they have loved it.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I was kind of like thinking of notes to write down before coming in and just thinking of his impact, and like he's a household name when it comes to the community of fat, and you had already said it's, it doesn't have to just be gainers, and it doesn't have to just be gay men and gainers. It could be fat admirers, people that are just plus sized that like fat. And it's one of those things where, ever since, I've been on the internet, it's one of those things where I started to read and discover his stuff. But that was 20, 30 years ago. And the fact that that is still happening to this day and people know of him and know of those old stories and imagery, I think that's probably the biggest impact you can make on a community.
To echo on what Rob said, he is a household name in the gainer community. Everyone knows who Warren Davis is. And I love to see all the new artwork in the community, and there's a lot of it, and it's delightful. Not the AI stuff, but all of the original artwork. But I do love the fact that Warren's style is so distinct. You instantly know it when you see it, and it stands out. There's a classicness to it, almost like a Tom of Finland for gainers. And I think he has made just an incredible impact, not just on obviously we know the gay community, but beyond the gay community, for anyone who loves to look at fat images, fat positive images, this hyper masculinity, hyper fatness. It's just, and I'm so grateful that he is part of our origin story in a way, and continues to be such a huge impact for other artists.
I did quite a bit of my own artwork in illustrations and comics myself, but I do drawings. Warren did people. I mean, they protrude from the page. It's something I would aspire to at that. He sets a standard. He really did.
I think, yeah, he's got such a legacy. Like in each of us have our own little Venn diagram of who we know and who we don't. But I think in everyone's, Warren Davis would be present. And he was really great at capturing certain details, like capturing body hair or the way that seams would rip, or just different emotions. Like some are very intimate and even like tender or wholesome, while others are very active. And so just the huge variance that he was able to do, I think, has been able to inspire a lot of different artwork and stories from now multiple generations of people in our community.
Yeah, James and I were talking about how, a whole generation has now passed, and like he's had so much impact and influence, and like you were saying, Alex, the way that he illustrated these things, and like this, when I think about the Warren Davis images, I think about like the way he would draw a belly being perfectly round, just this perfect sphere of fat, and yet looked perfectly natural attached to the body that he would then draw, with the love handles and the thick thighs and the full faces. And all of his men were always drawn very handsomely, like Phil said, like Tom of Finland kind of guys. So I mean, it's just, I don't know, is there anyone who's had a bigger impact on our community besides Warren? I don't think there has been.
I don't think so either. We've made a point to say this throughout the series. This is not to eschew any members who are artists or other people who've done fiction work, but there is something to be said that, as we say, Warren Davis is a household name in our space, and no one else has necessarily hit quite in the same fashion. Again, I don't think that's a skill issue. I think it's a question of like what he managed to tap into, and I think something I've shared before is that Warren Davis artwork and the associated stories were the first time that I was shown fatness as desirable, not in a way simply in which one is fetishized, and there is a fetish element because we find that sexy and sure, but when you think about the worlds in which these stories occur, so often their size is power, their size is wanted, and even if they didn't know that they want it, they accept it so willingly once they discover the beauty and the blessings of size, they accrue and they demand more. And it is not like there's no instance of, you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's no, I will have my cake and I will eat it. I will lick the crumbs of the plate. I will snap my fingers. I will have a whole brand new cake delivered and have that as well. Like there's just something that is so inviting about a scenario that says you can have everything. There is no reason that you should go without. Everybody here is having a good time, and all you need to do is just have the good time. Don't sit in the funk. Go with it and have fun. And in all of the stories, you see the characters go through that inevitable moment of pleasure, the giving in, the trialing, and the eventual succumbing to nothing but pleasure. I think what Warren has managed to capture is absolutely unique. No one has replicated it since, and I think is one of the main reasons why we wanted to do this series, is to really highlight and celebrate the efforts of someone who, as far as we're aware, has not been participating in the community for a very long time. This is a love letter to say to this person, thank you for all of the incredible work. And, we'll get to some moments at the end, of course. But throughout the series, we've been covering various stories that he has done illustrations for. But of course, there are the miscellaneous works that appeared in various issues of Encouragement magazine, things that have made their way onto the internet by prying eyes over the years. And so I figured this is our opportunity to go through some of those and talk about the pieces that inspire us the most.
I was going to say that one image that always stood out to me that I thought was a part of An Affair to Remember, but it's actually a standalone, is of it's two men. I thought that they were standing in a doorway, but I guess they aren't because the background is just blank. But it's two men. One of them is in a leather jacket and jeans, and his belly is just huge and round and a perfect ball. And there's a shorter guy with a little bit of pudge on him as well, feeding the bigger guy eclairs. And this image has just always stuck with me for some reason. I think it was, again, the swell of his belly, the size of his pecs, the little bit of body hair that's drawn on, the fact that he's in a leather jacket. So I'm assuming this guy was like a biker, or, like the tough guy, who's being like fattened up. And yeah, that image is burned into my head forever.
For me, I would have to say the construction worker with the jackhammer. To me, that kind of gives me a very masculine type of, guy that I wanted to be and look like. And kind of reflecting on what Alex had said earlier, like I feel like he drew body hair so well, he drew fat so well, and the fact that, he took like an everyday blue collar worker but then sexualized it, or sensualized it, I should say, not necessarily sexualized, because it's just him doing his job. But the fact that he's got 6 inches of belly showing and his hair's out on display, he's got his muscles and that type of thing, and there's somebody looking at him, what you would think is an admiration. It just, that one has always stayed with me, out of his miscellaneous artworks.
There's one that sticks out in kind of a different way for me, but it says "Goodbye, Ben" across it on a banner. And I'm assuming that is for John, whose pen name was Ben Stone, I think.
Yes, that was the final edition of Encouragement.
So there's just something that is I don't even know the right emotion for it, because it's just like we can't really talk about Warren without talking about the community that existed at that time. And for a generation like myself that kind of came after Encouragement at the beginning of like all the social apps, we didn't really know the history. We didn't really know how community was built and how important this was. So to see that, it just like really kind of goes to the heart of, behind all of this, like, yes, there's the attraction and the fantasy, but also because of the way that society views what we find very natural, we have that need to build community. And so I really, really like that that one survived, because I'm sure there's others that didn't.
It's an embarrassment of riches as far as I'm concerned. I mean, though, to be honest, and maybe it's because I have the original, one of my favorites is from Bellied Boy with a Badge, which it just shows the main character standing there cuddling his belly and looking very, very happy. And and it is, I mean, and it's just the happiness involved in it. And, you know, like you just want to hug that man because never mind the adventure he's in or where he's going, he just is.
I want to do more than hug that man.
Mhm.
I want to get my face right in that.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know that you're going to live happily ever after with him, even if you have to grease the doorways to get him through.
You know, Moshe, I love how you describe that. And that's what I see in so many of the artworks. You know, one of the pieces that I was looking at was on the image list is Buddy Feeding 101, the two guys feeding each other. And, you know, this piece, as well as so many of the others that we see, these characters that are created are filled with such an agency. You know, they're not helpless, at least by the end of the story, depending upon what the subject matter is. But these are individuals who clearly are unapologetic in their love of their size. You know, they're embracing everything about themselves. They're embracing whether they can walk or not. You know, they're embracing, you know, the resulting gluttony that they've indulged in, you know, pure hedonism. And there is no sorrow, there is no regret, you know, there is just, it's pride and satisfaction. And I think that resonates in so many of the pieces. And I think that is what I think is so exciting and so encouraging in themselves, in that it lets, you know, the reader know you can have this pride, you can feel powerful, you can feel sexy, all of these things, as well as being incredibly fat. There's just there is nothing wrong with wanting it. You can be empowered, and I think that is one thing that I love about them, that it does more than just excite you. You know, it provides an image of what is possible, what you can become, and that you don't have to hide, you know, in a room without windows and, you know, away from the world. You can be part of society, and society has to open up and make room for you. You know, that, you know, you don't have to apologize for the space your body requires. You know, you are here and people will notice, and you will command all the attention in the room when you walk into it, and rightfully so.
Absolutely. The one that jumped out at me, and you know, you mentioned the Feed Your Buddy 101. There's another Feed Your Buddy which was just fantastic, this shot, but the one that really jumped out to me was actually the one underneath it. It's two gentlemen, both of them quite furry underneath. They're laying on the ground, one of them with his hand on the bucket of fried chicken, smirking at the other one who's kind of, he's got his arm around his shoulder and he's got his hand on his belly, sort of looming over him a little bit. And there's something that is so, when I reflect on, just going to say it, what I enjoy most in an intimate session with another gentleman is epitomized by this. It is absolutely that image of, there is something said about this indulgence in food and this shapeliness. It is humanity wrapped around itself, and it is just so gorgeously indulgent and sexy. And I look at that and I feel ironically seen by it. I feel that the encapsulation of everything that I love about experiencing another man, about body, about sex, about sensuality and romance, and all of it is covered by that image. It's just glorious.
Jim, can I comment on something that you just mentioned?
Please do.
And about seeing yourself. You know, in Warren's artwork, there was a mixture of every potential ethnicity. It wasn't just white characters. You can clearly see a range of nationalities, a range of ethnicities in the artwork. And I think that allowed so many of us who are not white Caucasian to see ourselves in this artwork, to be able to imagine ourselves. And I think that was at a time when you didn't really see a lot of that. You really didn't see people of color in the artwork itself. And I think that is another really powerful piece that really should be mentioned and made clear of how grateful those of us who could see ourselves in this artwork, how important that was.
I think we need to have the Gainer Games. Like, someone needs to make that happen.
Yes. Oh my God.
What Phil says is quite right, that he really did give a wide range of different people in his artwork and made them all desirable and sexy, and it was wonderful. And I mean, I'm looking right now at a Christmas card he sent me where he is the Santa, and it is and just the joy that he's having in as he's depicting himself in the card. It's not exactly him, but I think it's how he wanted me to see him at the time. And because he was not quite what the Santa on the card looks like, but it's him. And if you want me to show it,
That would be
um,
fabulous. This is probably the closest approximation that any of us will ever get to see of the man himself. So take this as good as we're ever gonna get of a selfie from the man.
he put a few other people in some of his images, and I don't know how right or wrong it would be to point out who was who, because I know I can say that there are a couple that he did do a sort of facsimile of John in the images, and it's actually always good to look at those pictures and see John there.
And for as much as we don't know about Warren, like the things that we do know are that, and Moshe, you've been so instrumental in like filling in gaps in what information people have. But like we know that Ben Stone, aka John Alcott, interviewed him for Encouragement magazine back in '96, that Warren did all this artwork for Encouragement magazine. And during the interview, he said that he had been cartooning since he was a young man. And during the time that he was doing these illustrations, he was also working for a major magazine. And at the time that he was most active, he was about mid-30s ish, living in the East Village in Manhattan. So that would put him probably somewhere in his mid-60s. So very much potential that Mr. Davis is still out there, very much alive. Hoping he might even see this and be inspired to, I don't know, come back, maybe talk to us, maybe, maybe actually maybe he'll actually get the opportunity for all of us to give him the flowers that he so, wonderfully deserves. And, one thing that Moshe was nice enough to clarify for us that we did not know, and I think is important to bring up, is that Warren Davis was a man of color. He was a black man.
So little is known about him, and he shaped so many core memories for us. I'd like to put it to the group. What is the number one thing each of you would like to know about the man? Whether it's an aspect of who he was at the time, who he is now. What do we want to know most about Warren Davis?
I guess for me, I didn't know if he was a very large man or if he was smaller. I didn't know if he was with somebody that was very large or smaller. So for me, it was kind of the relationship dynamic and that interpersonal communication and relationships that he might have with others. If he was in a relationship or if, he was a single, but just really into large men, just that sort of dynamic of, what he looked like versus what he was into for a partner or relationship or things like that.
And one of the things that I would love to ask him, how does he feel about the effect that he's had on the Gainer community, which has, we all know has been substantial, I think. I would just love to know how does he align with that? How does he feel about having that such an incredible impact on so many people in both fantasy and turning that into reality in their own lives? I would just love to know, his thoughts on that.
I feel like I would love to sort of pick his brain about, because like obviously I was younger in the 90s, but like I was there, and I remember discovering these images on the internet. And like I think his last one was around 2002, when I would have been like about 21. So I would love to just sort of pick his brain about, what his experiences were like in the 90s in New York, and the kind of places that he lived, and like the kind of men that he saw, that he was, dreaming up like fat versions of them. And just, yeah, just to kind of like get his life story, get his experiences, get like the living history of the gainer community, because he was there with Moshe, stuffing envelopes and mailing out uh, the issues of encouragement, and what it was like back then to not have internet connections with people. Because like, though I grew up without the internet, by the time I was a young person in the world, I was connected like everybody else. So I don't know what it would be like to write into a magazine that nobody knows about and be like, hey, here's my little like $2 subscription fee. Like, when can I expect the first issue? And like, and waiting every week, month, however often it came out, for that issue to get there, and just be, being excited to like rip it open and start reading it. I'd love to just get a better picture of what that was like.
What I'd like to do is really just know that Warren is happy and involved in whatever relationship is working for him best. And I'd love him if he would know that how much he has meant to so many people. And I wish he could be in a situation where he can receive our appreciation. I do miss him. He was a lot of fun to hang out with, and we were fellow lunatics in certain ways. And we were growing up together in a way, I think. We were discovering the world at the same time. And John was being our rather interesting and wonderful guide in many ways.
So I guess less of a question and more of just like a hope. Like, I mean, I hope he found what he gave to all of us. So yeah, Warren, if you're listening, we all hope you're doing well.
If I had a question, I would want to know, how do you feel about the impact you've had? And I think it's quite clear from this series, from the conversation today, and I think just about anyone you could ask. The impression is that Warren has changed the lives of everyone. Warren has left an undeniable mark on this community and on the lives of countless individuals. And if I could ask him, I'd want to know how that makes him feel, to know that he has affected the lives of so many in a way that is so positive, is so full of love and joy and pleasure and brilliance. I'd want to know. But this is pretty much it, y'all. This is the end of the series. And we've finished every episode by just rounding off with what we would say to Warren if he was here right now. So let's pretend he is the 7th person on this call. This is your moment. Warren Davis is in front of us. What do you want to say to him?
I'd want to just say, as a rural, gay, obese teen from the Midwest, rural Midwest, you've given me something to enjoy that's an obviously like physically stimulating responses, but also gave me something emotionally and mentally reassuring during my formative years, letting me know that there's people out there into me, finding me attractive, and you shouldn't hate the fact that you're a fat man, loving yourself based on the imagery that you painted with the attraction and the lust that you see in other people's eyes. You're a very talented and amazing artist. You've captured my fantasies and you've influenced me to live vicariously through your art. And you're a legend among the community. So thank you.
I would love to tell Warren that I am so thankful that he has been part of our community, for helping mold it, for helping help with enriching our fantasy lives. And that if he was ever in Southern California, I'd love to chew the fat over tea, but thank you for all that you've given us in ways that you may not even know, but how appreciative we are to have had you in our lives.
Yeah, also, like everyone, just thank you for sharing your talent with all of us. You made the community better, made all of our lives better. You are so good at what you did, and it raised the bar of the entire community and continues to do so. So, yeah, what can I do except for say thank you?
I have to repeat, thank you also. And for the projects we did on encouragement and the projects we did on GainerWeb, and for the ideas we sparked off each other and the sheer fun we had together. I thank you so much for that. And you formed a very important part of my life at a time that I was discovering the world.
I would say come back, please, because it's if only to, again, see the impact that he's left, because a lot of Gainer art has sprung up over the years. And I don't know if all of them would say that they drew some inspiration from his work, but I'm sure that they're all aware of his work in one way or another. And Warren's work came first, really. And so then everything that comes after it is sort of like, in some way, homage to what he has done in the past. And yeah, I just want to see him back. I want to see more. I want to see new things. I want to see, like, now that technology's advanced a little bit further, like, I'd love to see some more scenarios. I'd love to see someone submit a new story to him to illustrate. And maybe even bring back encouragement, maybe bring it back as a digital zine. Times have changed. Like, magazines can be distributed in a completely different way now. So
I think thanks is in many ways too small a phrase. We've waxed poetic this whole series and today, all dedicated to telling this man how much we love and appreciate everything that he's done. And the true hope is that if this man is still with us, that he finds it. If someone knows that he's around, they send it to him so that he can see just how grateful all of us are for his incredible work. So it's an echo. Thank you, Warren. Thank you for everything. And I do hope that you do come to know how loved you truly are by all of us in this community.
Just thought, as a fitting end for the year, I just want to show the New Year's card that he sent me in 95, 96. So, so this is the Happy New Year's, and I wish you all a Happy New Year for the year to come. It should be happier, safer, and saner than we've been knowing so far.
I receive that. I think we could all receive that our coming year might be a little bit more sane than it has been. But yeah. What a lovely end to our series, to this anthology. Thank you everyone so much for being here today. But I suppose that is a wrap for the Warren Davis Anthology. You can find me on Instagram and BlueSky at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram at thiccmouse and Grommr at orpheus.
Now y'all, please like this video, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the motherfucking channel, okay? Comment below and let us know your thoughts on today's conversation. Share this video with your friends and encourage them to look back through our wonderful catalogue as we close out this incredible experience where we have gotten to discuss some truly epic stories. Thank you all for everything, and until next time, bye Fats.
Bye Fats.